What happens when a royal figure is publicly rejected at one of Hollywood's biggest events? In a shocking turn of events, Rachel Brosnahan tells Meghan Markle to step aside, and the Duchess's fury erupts. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, found herself at the center of a red carpet scandal that left Hollywood reeling. After begging for a photo with rising star Rachel Brosnahan at the Superman premiere, Meghan was told no. Eyewitnesses say she was furious, storming off and demanding that security erase all footage of the encounter. "No one humiliates a duchess in public," she allegedly said. Why did Rachel refuse? What does this explosive moment reveal about the power struggles in Hollywood? And what happens when fame, ego, and rejection collide? Stay tuned as we unravel the story behind the confrontation that could shake both Hollywood and Meghan's carefully crafted image. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It was supposed to be another dazzling Hollywood night, where A-list celebrities walked down the red carpet under the shimmering lights, posing for photos, signing autographs, and relishing in their star power. Yet, in the midst of this glitzy scene, something completely unexpected happened, a moment that would turn heads and spark a flurry of reactions across the entertainment world. At the Superman premiere, a gathering of the world's most famous faces, something unfolded that no one could have predicted. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, known for her public life and the many headlines she's been part of, was publicly rejected by none other than Rachel Brosnahan, an actress best known for her role in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. It wasn't just an awkward brush-off. It was a sharp, direct moment that caught the eye of everyone in attendance and set off a chain of events that left many questioning the dynamics of celebrity, privilege, and the battle for the limelight. Picture this: Meghan Markle, standing among the stars of the premiere, surrounded by the flashing lights of paparazzi, attempts to make her move. She steps forward, camera ready, and extends an invitation for a moment with Rachel Brosnahan. But instead of the usual pleasantries or a smile for the camera, Rachel does something few would expect. She turns Meghan away. With a firm, decisive hand, Rachel tells her to step aside. The message was clear: this moment was not meant for you. What followed was as dramatic as the confrontation itself. Meghan, visibly shaken by the rejection, stormed off in a fury, muttering to her team. "No one humiliates a duchess in public," she allegedly said, her voice carrying in the frenzy of flashing bulbs and whispered conversations. But it didn't end there. Meghan, still steaming with indignation, ordered security to ensure that no footage of the encounter was allowed to surface. Her team scrambled, trying to erase any evidence of the now infamous moment before it could reach the public eye. How did this seemingly simple interaction evolve into a full-scale spectacle that caught the attention of millions around the globe? And why did Rachel Brosnahan, someone who has always maintained a positive and polished public image, choose this moment to stand her ground? What does this encounter tell us about the hidden tensions behind celebrity culture, the expectations of public life, and the power struggles between Hollywood elites? The stakes of this incident go beyond a simple red carpet interaction. This was an incident that highlighted the complexities of fame, the scrutiny that public figures face, and the delicate balancing act of navigating the celebrity world. What happens when the world's expectations of you clash with your own sense of agency? When the roles we play on screen or in the media bleed into our real lives, how much control do we really have over our own narratives? This introduction sets the stage for a deeper exploration into the nuances of celebrity life, image management, and public confrontation. As we dissect what happened on that fateful evening, we'll uncover the underlying issues that led to the confrontation and examine the aftermath, offering you a behind-the-scenes look at what happens when two powerful women, each with their own legacies, collide under the watchful eyes of the world. But let's not just look at the surface of this encounter. This isn't just about Rachel Brosnahan rejecting Meghan Markle for a photo. It's about what that rejection symbolizes. It's about the fractured public image of a duchess who has tried to control her narrative at every turn, and the actress who, despite her own rise to fame, managed to take a bold stand. What does it mean when you try to erase the history of a public moment? Can you truly control the narrative, or is the story bigger than you? And what happens when that story spirals beyond your control? In this video, we'll break down the event, step by step. We'll delve into the psychological dynamics of what might have led Rachel Brosnahan to refuse the photo, the emotional aftermath for Meghan Markle, and the broader implications for both of their careers moving forward. We'll also unpack the complex relationship between celebrities and their public images, how they curate, protect, and sometimes sabotage their own legacies in the face of immense scrutiny. So, why does this moment matter? It's not just about two women at a premiere. It's about the layers of meaning we assign to public figures and the weight of the media spotlight. For Meghan Markle, who has long navigated the pressures of the royal spotlight, this rejection could signify something far more profound than just a bad red carpet moment. It could be the latest chapter in a long-running struggle to maintain control over her story. For Rachel Brosnahan, this could be a defining moment in her public image, choosing not to go along with the status quo, but instead taking a firm stand against the culture of celebrity that demands compliance. As we delve deeper into the story, we'll uncover how a seemingly trivial moment on a red carpet could have lasting consequences for both women's careers, their personal lives, and the public's perception of them. Buckle up, because the twists and turns in this tale are anything but predictable. This is more than just another celebrity feud. It's a look into the dynamics of fame, rejection, and the power of choice. Stay tuned as we break down the events that led to this unforgettable encounter, and the ripple effects that will echo far beyond the glitz and glamour of the Superman premiere. The Superman premiere, an event that had been long anticipated by fans and celebrities alike, was a spectacle like no other. The evening air buzzed with excitement as the red carpet stretched endlessly, lined with hundreds of cameras flashing in every direction. The Hollywood elite were gathered for what was expected to be another celebration of cinema, power, and prestige. But beneath the surface of glamorous gowns, perfectly tailored suits, and polished performances, a quiet tension simmered, one that was about to erupt in a way no one could have foreseen. The event was a feast for the eyes, the bold hues of designer outfits, the sharp angles of photographers capturing every angle, and the hum of chatter from stars, their stylists, and the onlookers who lined the barricades. The air was thick with the fragrance of expensive perfumes and the subtle click of heels as celebrities made their way down the carpet. As always, the Superman premiere promised to be a grand display, one where the usual cast of actors, directors, and producers posed for photos, answered questions, and generally basked in the glowing spotlight of Hollywood's ever-turning wheel. Among the expected attendees, however, there was one name that had set the media world abuzz for weeks leading up to the event: Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex. Known not only for her royal background but for her highly publicized departure from royal duties, Meghan had become both an icon and a lightning rod for controversy. Despite her transition from the UK royal family to a life of celebrity in the United States, Meghan remained one of the most watched figures in global media. Every step she took was scrutinized. Every word she spoke, dissected. And on this particular evening, the eyes of the world were on her, as she arrived at the premiere alongside her husband, Prince Harry. At first glance, Meghan's entrance seemed entirely in line with the high expectations placed upon her. She was dressed in a stunning ensemble, elegant yet bold, perfectly tailored to showcase both her fashion-forward sense and her royal background. The paparazzi loved her. She had become the ideal subject for their lenses, always ready to deliver a moment of intrigue, emotion, or drama. The expectations were high as she stepped onto the red carpet. Meghan's every move was caught by dozens of cameras that awaited her usual poised, composed appearance. But this evening, things would take a surprising turn. For as much as Meghan was expected to charm the cameras and glide effortlessly through the scene, another actress, Rachel Brosnahan, would soon change the dynamic of the evening. Rachel Brosnahan had a different energy altogether. Known for her role in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, she had cemented herself as one of Hollywood's beloved rising stars. She was admired for her impeccable fashion sense, her award-winning performance, and her ability to navigate the media landscape with a grace that appeared effortless. Rachel's presence at the premiere was certainly a nod to her growing star power, but it also provided a moment of contrast to Meghan's energy. Meghan, despite her poised exterior, had already faced a fair share of public scrutiny and criticism. Rachel, on the other hand, was still in the phase of building her career and personal brand, largely unscathed by the type of media storm that often surrounded someone like Meghan. The two women were part of the larger celebrity ecosystem, but their trajectories had been vastly different. Meghan's life had been the subject of tabloid covers, interviews, and royal affairs, whereas Rachel was relatively new to the scene, but quickly becoming a household name thanks to her exceptional talent. While Meghan had built her identity on a public role that required her to play the part of a dutiful royal-turned-humanitarian, Rachel had been celebrated for a role that required wit, sharpness, and a brilliant comic timing that resonated with audiences around the world. As they both stood on the red carpet, the contrast between the two women became increasingly apparent. Meghan Markle, though exuding confidence, had the unmistakable air of someone who knew that her every move was being analyzed. Rachel, by comparison, appeared more relaxed, comfortable in the spotlight, but also mindful of the personal space she had cultivated. Their personalities and careers had propelled them to the same event, but it was clear that their relationships with fame were vastly different. This subtle tension would not remain unnoticed for long. As the night went on, the usual cycle of photos and questions from the press continued. The flashes of cameras, the rapid-fire questions, the smiling faces of Hollywood's elite, they all blended into a familiar blur for the guests. However, for Meghan Markle, the red carpet was quickly turning into an arena where power dynamics and public image would come to a head. She was already an outsider in many ways, trying to forge a new life in the limelight, but the media and public were still unwilling to let go of the narratives surrounding her. It was in this environment that she made her move toward Rachel Brosnahan. Rachel, who had been posing for pictures and chatting with journalists, seemed taken aback as Meghan approached her. Eyewitnesses later revealed that Meghan had asked for a photograph with Rachel, an innocent enough request, given the occasion. But in that moment, Rachel's response would surprise everyone. Rachel, ever so composed and seemingly unfazed by the rapid movement of the red carpet, turned to Meghan with a look of polite but firm refusal. According to those who witnessed the exchange, Rachel told Meghan she would rather not take a photo at that moment. The request was simple enough, but the refusal was sharp. It was as though Rachel had drawn a line in the sand, deciding that she wasn't going to participate in a photo op simply because it was expected of her. The reaction was immediate. Meghan, visibly stunned, took a step back. A shift in the atmosphere was palpable, with several onlookers sensing the sudden change in mood. It was clear that this rejection had caught Meghan off guard. The Duchess, known for her controlled public demeanor, now found herself in the unexpected position of being turned away. The rejection wasn't just a matter of personal pride. It was a direct challenge to her carefully crafted public image. It was an affront to the persona she had worked so hard to maintain, the one where she was in charge of every narrative, every photo op, and every conversation that played out before the cameras. This wasn't just about a photo. It was about power, control, and the subtle games that celebrities play in the spotlight. As Meghan tried to mask her visible frustration, Rachel turned her attention elsewhere, seamlessly continuing her interactions with other guests and photographers. But for Meghan, this rejection wasn't something she could easily let go of. What followed would not only define her night, but send ripples through the media world in the days to come. And so, the stage was set for an unfolding drama, one where the lines between fame, power, and the personal were about to blur in the most public of ways. The premiere that had started as a celebration of Hollywood's biggest night would soon become the backdrop for a confrontation that would spark heated debate and draw attention to the complex dynamics of celebrity life. Meghan Markle's request for the photo. The request seemed innocent enough. At least, that's what Meghan Markle may have hoped when she approached Rachel Brosnahan during the height of the Superman premiere. In the midst of the flashing lights and swirling excitement, a simple ask for a photo seemed like the natural move for someone who had spent much of her life in front of cameras. But this seemingly mundane moment quickly spiraled into an unexpected and charged confrontation. For Meghan, this red carpet moment was no different than any other in terms of the expectations that came with it. She had faced the media spotlight for years, first as a TV actress, then as a royal, and now as a global figure with significant influence. The cameras loved her. They followed her every move. The tabloids tracked her every outfit, every word, every glance. But despite her transition from a member of the royal family to a private citizen, Meghan had never truly been able to escape the glare of public scrutiny. If anything, the spotlight seemed to have only grown more intense. This was a moment that Meghan would have likely assumed was simply part of the routine. Approach an actress like Rachel Brosnahan, ask for a photo, pose together with smiles, and continue on with the night. It was a strategy that had worked countless times before. After all, photos were a powerful currency in Hollywood. For someone like Meghan, who had experienced the highs and lows of public life, Getting a moment with a rising star like Rachel seemed not only natural, but almost expected. The optics were everything. A picture with Rachel, who was quickly becoming one of the hottest young actresses in Hollywood, would certainly bolster Meghan's public image. It would be seen as a gracious gesture between two accomplished women, creating a connection that the media would inevitably seize upon. Meghan's public relations team had likely already calculated the benefits of this moment. A photograph with Rachel would likely portray her as not only part of the Hollywood elite but someone who could still play nice with fellow actresses, a sharp contrast to the more controversial headlines that had often followed her. But this time, things didn't go as planned. Meghan, with her trademark smile and poised composure, approached Rachel, extending an invitation for the photo. It was a moment that had played out countless times before for other celebrities, a simple exchange that resulted in a handful of moments captured for the cameras. Yet, instead of the expected smile and the customary click of the cameras, Rachel's response was anything but what Meghan anticipated. Rachel, standing with a group of other guests, seemed taken aback by the request. Perhaps she hadn't expected it. Or maybe, like many in Hollywood, she knew that some moments had a deeper significance than others. For whatever reason, Rachel didn't simply pose for a picture with Meghan. She refused. She told Meghan, in no uncertain terms, that she would not be taking a photo at that time. The exact words of Rachel's refusal were never fully disclosed, but it was clear from witnesses that her tone was polite but firm. At first, Meghan didn't seem to know how to react. She was used to being adored, photographed, and revered. Her entire identity as a public figure had been shaped by her ability to control the narrative and maintain a composed, regal presence. But now, in this seemingly trivial moment, she found herself at a loss. The cold rejection stung in ways that Meghan likely hadn't anticipated. A part of her must have felt that the equation had been wrong. She was the one expected to be in control, the one whose image was constantly under the lens, not the one left out of the frame. This moment of rejection was significant for Meghan on a deeper level. To understand why, it's important to look at her mindset and the position she found herself in at this point in her career. Meghan had spent years navigating a world of public scrutiny, trying to reclaim some semblance of control over the narrative of her life. Every move she made, whether it was stepping out for a charity event or giving an interview, was scrutinized through a lens of royal expectations and celebrity gossip. Meghan had always been conscious of the power of image, how a single photo, a single appearance, could change everything. Her request for the photo with Rachel was, in many ways, an attempt to assert herself in a new world, a world where she was no longer just the Duchess. She was now a Hollywood figure, carving out a new identity for herself outside the confines of the royal family. The idea of posing with someone like Rachel was likely part of her broader strategy to establish herself in the entertainment industry. And yet, this moment, this seemingly small ask, would unravel that carefully curated image in the blink of an eye. When Rachel turned her down, it wasn't just a refusal of a photo. It was a subtle but stark reminder that Meghan was no longer the royal figure everyone had once viewed with reverence. The power dynamics of Hollywood were different. Here, no one was required to cater to the wishes of a royal. In this world, celebrities were equal in their star power, but they were also subject to the whims and decisions of one another. Meghan's request for a photo, which she had no doubt thought of as a simple moment of collaboration, was now a symbol of something larger, the fragility of her public image. At that point, Meghan's reaction shifted. Her face, which had once been poised and controlled, now seemed to tighten with frustration. Witnesses later recounted how her demeanor changed almost instantly, as though the rejection had stung in a way that Meghan could not hide. The moment was no longer just about a photo. It became a confrontation between Meghan's image as a duchess and the reality of how she was perceived in this new world of Hollywood. For Meghan, the public image was everything. She had spent years building her brand, working with charities, speaking on global issues, and participating in high-profile events. This rejection wasn't just personal. It was an affront to her sense of control, her carefully constructed public narrative, and perhaps most importantly, her role in the industry she was now trying to penetrate. In the blink of an eye, what was supposed to be a moment of bonding, of two actresses sharing a brief connection, turned into an awkward and charged encounter. Meghan Markle, once the epitome of grace and composure, was now faced with a reminder that fame could be as isolating as it was elevating. Rachel Brosnahan, on the other hand, had simply acted on her instincts, maintaining her boundaries in a way that was perhaps unremarkable to most. But to Meghan, it was a rejection of her place in the Hollywood pecking order. As the moment lingered in the air, Meghan quickly realized that the scene had shifted. The cameras that had been poised to capture a warm exchange now turned on her, and the wheels of the media machine began to churn. But what would come next in this unfolding drama was not just about the refusal itself. It was about how Meghan would respond to the blow to her pride, how the rejection would ripple out into the public eye, and how it would ultimately shape her actions in the minutes and hours to follow. Rachel Brosnahan's reaction. Rachel Brosnahan was no stranger to the spotlight. A celebrated actress, best known for her stellar performance in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Rachel had risen to prominence not only for her impeccable acting talent but also for her poise and charm in front of the cameras. She was a Hollywood darling, recognized for her fashion choices, quick wit, and ability to remain grounded in the chaotic world of fame. But the encounter on the Superman premiere's red carpet would reveal a side of Rachel that not many had seen before, a side that was less about the spotlight and more about standing firm in her own boundaries. From the moment Meghan Markle approached her, Rachel was fully aware of the cameras trained on her, the flashing lights, and the pressure of being part of a highly publicized event. Yet, she maintained an air of calm and composure, as if she had practiced the art of navigating such interactions 1,000 times over. In Hollywood, moments like this were common. Actors and actresses would often cross paths with fellow stars, request photos, and share pleasantries. For many, it was simply part of the game. But for Rachel, this moment was different. She wasn't going to play along with the usual expectation. When Meghan, with her usual grace, asked for a photograph, Rachel's response was polite but firm. She told Meghan that she wasn't interested in taking a photo at that moment. The decision was not made out of malice, but rather a personal choice to protect her own space in a high-stakes environment. For Rachel, celebrity was something to be managed, and she knew that every public interaction had consequences. She wasn't about to be pulled into a photo op just because it was expected of her. To the outside observer, Rachel's reaction might have seemed like a small, inconsequential moment. After all, celebrities turned down requests for photos all the time. Yet, the impact of Rachel's refusal on Meghan was significant, and the fallout that followed was anything but insignificant. In that instant, Rachel unknowingly threw a wrench into the narrative that Meghan had spent years carefully constructing. A narrative that centered around her image as a royal figure and later, as a prominent public personality. The refusal wasn't just a personal choice, it was a statement in itself. Rachel, unlike Meghan, had a different relationship with public attention. For one, she was still in the early stages of her career, carving out a space for herself in Hollywood without the weight of royal expectations. She had the freedom to control how she presented herself to the public, a luxury that Meghan had long ago relinquished. As a result, Rachel's decision was not driven by any personal animosity or desire to create drama. It was simply a matter of boundaries. In an industry where everything, every gesture, every word, every photo is analyzed and dissected, Rachel knew that this moment could have far-reaching consequences. But she stood firm. She was not going to be pushed into playing a role she wasn't comfortable with, even if that role was expected of her by the public or by Meghan herself. Rachel's decision to set a boundary in that moment was powerful. It demonstrated that even in the world of Hollywood, where fame often dictates behavior, there were still some individuals who refused to bend to the pressure. Her reaction was not just about rejecting a photo. It was about rejecting the idea that celebrity interactions should always fit the mold of what the media and the public expected. In that brief exchange, Rachel subtly pushed back against the system, against the notion that celebrities were obligated to conform to the image that the media, and sometimes even fellow stars, wanted them to project. As Meghan stood there, visibly stunned by the refusal, Rachel made it clear that she was in control of her own narrative. She did not owe anyone a moment for the sake of appearances. The look on Rachel's face as she turned away from Meghan was not one of disdain, but rather one of quiet resolve. She wasn't going to apologize for standing up for herself, and she wasn't going to let the pressure of the moment dictate her actions. This interaction between Rachel and Meghan was, in many ways, a microcosm of the larger power dynamics at play in the world of fame. Rachel, despite being relatively new to the Hollywood scene compared to Meghan, had already learned the delicate art of self-preservation. She had figured out how to navigate the red carpet without losing herself in the process. Meghan, on the other hand, was still struggling to reclaim her identity and manage the intense public scrutiny that had followed her since her departure from the royal family. Rachel's reaction, though seemingly small, was emblematic of the differences in their approaches to fame. For Rachel, it was about protecting her own space and maintaining control over her image, while for Meghan, it was about keeping up appearances and holding onto the narrative that she had worked so hard to build. In that moment, Rachel had asserted her right to define her own boundaries, while Meghan had been confronted with the stark reality that not everyone would play by her rules. What followed Rachel's refusal was not just a moment of personal pride, but a larger, more complex response from Meghan. As we would soon see, the rejection sent Meghan into a frenzy, sparking an emotional reaction that no one at the premiere could have predicted. The rejection wasn't just about a photo. It symbolized a larger conflict between two women who, despite their shared status as public figures, had fundamentally different approaches to fame and personal boundaries. Rachel's calm, measured response, however, would be contrasted sharply by Meghan's emotional outburst in the moments that followed. While Rachel carried herself with the confidence of someone who had mastered the art of navigating Hollywood's often treacherous waters, Meghan was suddenly thrown into a whirlwind of frustration and humiliation. An experience that would not only leave her rattled, but also set the stage for the chaos that would follow. In many ways, this moment on the red carpet was a turning point for both women. It marked a shift in the dynamic between them, a shift that would ultimately be played out in the public eye for weeks to come. Rachel had stood her ground, and Meghan, for the first time in a long while, had been faced with a reality that she couldn't control. Meghan Markle's outburst and the aftermath. The quiet tension that followed Rachel Brosnahan's refusal to take the photo with Meghan Markle was palpable. To the casual observer, the situation might have seemed like nothing more than a minor social faux pas, a small, fleeting moment in the whirlwind of a high-profile event. However, for Meghan, this seemingly innocuous interaction was far more significant. It was a personal affront, one that cracked the carefully constructed image she had so meticulously curated over the years. And it was this crack, this small break in her perfect public persona, that would set off a chain of events no one could have anticipated. As the moment lingered, Meghan's face visibly hardened. The smile she had worn for the cameras faltered, and her eyes, once full of composure, narrowed in frustration. Eyewitnesses later described how her body language shifted from poised to visibly agitated. Her shoulders stiffened, and the usual air of grace that Meghan exuded in public slowly began to slip away. She wasn't used to this kind of rejection. Meghan Markle had spent the last few years building an identity that was equal parts regal, compassionate, and undeniably influential. To be dismissed, especially in front of so many cameras, was a blow to her ego and sense of control. It didn't take long for her frustration to turn into full-blown anger. According to those who were present, Meghan began to speak rapidly, her voice tight with irritation. She muttered under her breath, seemingly to herself, but the words were clear enough. No one humiliates a duchess in public. These words, chilling in their arrogance and sense of entitlement, marked a stark contrast to the graciousness Meghan had often displayed. For the first time in the evening, Meghan was not the calm, composed figure she had projected for so long. She was a woman who felt her dignity had been questioned, and she was not going to stand for it. As the red carpet event continued around her, Meghan ordered her team to take swift action. The usually controlled Duchess of Sussex now found herself demanding that security remove any and all footage of the encounter. She instructed her staff to ensure that no images, no video, and no trace of the moment would find their way into the press. It was, in many ways, an attempt to erase the reality of what had just occurred, a reality in which Meghan had been rejected. Not just by Rachel, but by the very image of herself as the center of attention. The demand was a response to a deeper insecurity, one that Meghan had spent years trying to protect. Meghan's anger wasn't merely directed at Rachel. It was rooted in the larger frustration of a woman who had long been scrutinized by the public eye. Every detail of her life had been exposed, dissected, and manipulated by the media, leaving her with little room to control her own narrative. But in this moment, her attempt to control the situation by erasing any evidence of the rejection only served to highlight the larger issue she faced, the inability to dictate the terms of her public life. The more she tried to control the media, the more the media seemed to control her. Her team worked quickly, scrambling behind the scenes to ensure that no footage of the incident would be made public. The staff, seasoned in dealing with the chaos of royal life and celebrity, understood the gravity of the moment. They knew that if the interaction was captured and published, it would be the start of a media firestorm. Meghan had made her request for a photo, and Rachel had refused. To the public, it would appear as though Meghan had been humiliated, a sensation that Meghan herself could not bear. But even as her team worked diligently to erase the traces of the encounter, the damage had already been done. The red carpet was filled with witnesses who had seen the exchange firsthand. Some had even captured the moment on their phones. The truth of the encounter, Meghan's rejection, had already spread, albeit in fragmented pieces. Even if the footage was erased from the official press, the whispers of what had happened would find their way into the tabloids, into social media posts, and into the ongoing narrative of Meghan's tumultuous relationship with fame. As Meghan stormed off the red carpet, her emotional outburst sent a ripple through the premiere. What had started as a glamorous evening of Hollywood spectacle had now turned into a real-time drama that could not be easily swept under the rug. The flashes of cameras that had once celebrated the arrival of stars now captured Meghan's exit, her face clouded with anger and humiliation. The glimmer of her previous composure had disappeared, replaced by the raw emotions of someone who had just been publicly challenged. This shift in demeanor did not go unnoticed by the public. Meghan's emotional reaction to Rachel's refusal was immediately analyzed, scrutinized, and discussed across various media outlets. While some outlets sympathized with her, arguing that the rejection was a personal affront to a woman who had long been in the public eye, others took a more critical stance. They questioned Meghan's sense of entitlement, suggesting that her reaction was an example of how the pressure of fame had begun to chip away at her once immaculate image. What Meghan failed to realize in the heat of the moment was the power of perception. In her mind, she was simply protecting her dignity. She believed that by controlling the narrative, by erasing any footage or images of her moment of weakness, she could maintain the upper hand. But by making such an overt demand, she only drew more attention to the situation. The public, always hungry for the next story, would be more intrigued than ever. The more Meghan tried to hide her vulnerability, the more it became the subject of curiosity. The aftermath of Meghan's outburst wasn't just a matter of public relations, it was a deeper issue of identity. Meghan had long fought to shape her public image, and this rejection by Rachel had pierced the carefully constructed facade she had built. The media's response would only serve to add to her frustrations. The backlash was inevitable. For someone who had spent so much of her life as a symbol of grace and royalty, this very public display of emotion seemed to contradict everything she had worked for. The public would now ask, could Meghan truly handle the pressure of celebrity? Could she navigate Hollywood's fickle nature without resorting to controlling every detail? As the hours passed and the premiere came to an end, the fallout continued. Meghan Markle, once again at the center of a media storm, was left to reflect on what had just transpired. Her attempt to erase the incident had failed, and now she was left to confront the reality of her reaction, a reality that would haunt her for days to come. The public and media's reaction. As soon as the Superman premiere ended, the media machine went into overdrive. Within minutes, reports began to surface about the incident involving Meghan Markle and Rachel Brosnahan, and what had initially seemed like a minor interaction quickly became the subject of intense scrutiny. The media frenzy that followed was almost predictable. The spotlight was now fixed firmly on Meghan's emotional outburst in the aftermath of her attempt to erase the footage. What started as a simple rejection on the red carpet rapidly snowballed into a major story. News outlets across the globe seized on the confrontation, using words like humiliation, rebuke, and royal scandal to describe the scene. Meghan Markle, who had long been the subject of public fascination, was now at the center of another media firestorm. This was not her first time facing a storm of headlines, but it was certainly one that raised new questions about her ability to navigate public life after stepping away from royal duties. The media coverage fell into two distinct camps. On one side, there were those who sympathized with Meghan, seeing her rejection as a clear sign of the ongoing difficulties she faced as a woman in the public eye. For some, it was yet another example of how Meghan's every move was scrutinized, often unfairly, by the public and the media. Her supporters argued that no one could truly understand the pressure she was under, and that the refusal by Rachel Brosnahan was simply another example of how difficult it was to be Meghan Markle, a woman who had been thrust into the spotlight from all directions, constantly criticized, and continuously forced to defend her choices. Articles on this side of the debate pointed out how the media's relentless coverage of Meghan's every action had likely taken a toll on her emotional state. Many expressed concern over the growing intensity of public scrutiny, suggesting that it was only a matter of time before Meghan would crack under the pressure. She had been the subject of negative press for years, first as a member of the royal family, and now as an outspoken advocate for causes ranging from gender equality to mental health. The more she spoke out, the more she seemed to attract controversy, and the media never hesitated to capitalize on her every misstep. In this view, the incident at the premiere was a simple case of an emotionally exhausted woman facing the brunt of years of accumulated public pressure. On the other hand, the critical side of the media took a very different approach. For them, Meghan's reaction was not one of sympathy, but rather one of entitlement and privilege. Headlines such as Duchess of Defeat, Meghan Markle's outrage over photo rejection, and No One Humiliates a Duchess, Meghan Markle's temper flare captured the tone of their coverage. Critics argued that Meghan's emotional outburst was an example of how she struggled to cope with the loss of control over her public narrative. Instead of gracefully accepting a rejection, Meghan had lashed out, and in doing so, revealed her true nature to the world, someone who demanded attention and could not tolerate being publicly slighted. For this camp, the rejection was symbolic of a larger problem. Meghan's insistence on controlling her image, even in the face of something as small as a photo request, was seen as indicative of a deeper issue. Was Meghan Markle truly capable of thriving in Hollywood, a world where public figures were expected to weather rejection and criticism without flinching? Critics questioned whether she had learned to cope with the inherent lack of control that came with fame, especially after having lived for years in the more structured world of royal duties. What made the reaction even more interesting was how both sides of the debate seemed to view the refusal as a moment of power for Rachel Brosnahan. For those in the supportive camp, Rachel's decision to deny Meghan the photo was seen as a rare instance of a celebrity asserting her independence in an industry that often demanded compliance. In the media's eyes, Rachel had refused to be swept into the demands of a woman who had long been used to getting what she wanted. On the opposite side, critics painted Rachel's actions as a form of quiet defiance, a reminder that not every celebrity was willing to bow to the pressures of Hollywood's elite. The coverage on social media only amplified the story, spreading like wildfire across platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Memes began to appear almost instantly, mocking Meghan's response while celebrating Rachel's apparent boldness. In one viral post, a video of the encounter was captioned, "Meghan Markle, when the Queen of Drama meets the Queen of Grace." Other posts focused on the divide between the two women, speculating on why Rachel had decided to reject Meghan and whether this was an indication of a deeper, unspoken rivalry within Hollywood. While the story dominated tabloids and social media for days, it also sparked broader discussions about celebrity culture, the role of the media, and the expectations placed on public figures. Was it fair for Meghan Markle to feel entitled to be photographed with anyone she pleased, simply because of her royal background and her global visibility? Was Rachel Brosnahan right to establish boundaries, or was her refusal a sign of coldness and disinterest? The questions kept coming, each one fueling the fire and leading to new angles and debates. In the midst of this public spectacle, Meghan's own response was telling. As the media backlash intensified, Meghan remained relatively silent, letting her team handle the public relations fallout. A brief statement was issued by her representatives, which described the interaction as a misunderstanding, but the damage had already been done. The silence spoke volumes. Meghan's refusal to address the situation directly left many to speculate about her state of mind and whether she was truly in control of her narrative. It was clear that the rejection had struck a nerve, but Meghan's decision to not comment publicly only fueled the media's desire to continue digging deeper. For Rachel Brosnahan, the aftermath was markedly different. While she did not engage directly with the media frenzy, her public image seemed to benefit from the incident. The media praised her for standing firm in a world that often demanded celebrity compliance, and many saw her response as an example of strength and self-respect. The media seemed to rally behind her, framing Rachel as the one who had taken the high road in a situation that could have easily spiraled into something far more dramatic. However, the public reaction wasn't as clear-cut as it might have seemed. Meghan's supporters continued to defend her, suggesting that the backlash she faced was another example of the way the media loved to tear down women who dared to assert themselves. But for others, Rachel had become the unexpected heroine in the story, a figure who had quietly rejected the pressures of fame and refused to conform to the image that was expected of her. Both women, in their own way, had become symbols in the larger conversation about power, image, and the public's insatiable desire for celebrity drama. The story would continue to evolve in the days following the premiere. The public and media alike would dissect the event in countless articles, posts, and interviews, ensuring that the fallout from that seemingly trivial interaction would remain a topic of conversation for some time to come. But the real question remained. In a world where public personas could be shaped and shattered in an instant, who truly controlled the narrative, the stars themselves, or the public who consumed their every move? The conflict between Meghan Markle and Hollywood. For Meghan Markle, the incident at the Superman premiere was just the latest in a long string of public moments that have highlighted the tension between her and the Hollywood elite. Though she had once been part of the industry as an actress, her transition from royal life back to a celebrity in the United States had not been without its hurdles. The glitz and glamour of Hollywood were not as welcoming as Meghan might have hoped, and the red carpet rejection by Rachel Brosnahan was emblematic of a deeper, ongoing struggle. When Meghan Markle first entered the world of Hollywood, she did so as a relatively unknown actress, striving to make her mark in an industry that was notoriously difficult to break into. Her role in Suits had brought her some recognition, but it was her marriage to Prince Harry and the subsequent transition from actress to Duchess of Sussex that catapulted her into global fame. The move from relative anonymity to international scrutiny was not a smooth one, and over the years, Meghan has become a figure whose every word, gesture, and decision has been analyzed, dissected, and sometimes vilified. Hollywood, the very industry that Meghan had hoped would embrace her, quickly revealed its complexities. On the surface, it appeared to be a world of opportunity, one where celebrities were celebrated, their every action hailed by fans and the media. But beneath that veneer of star-studded glamour was an industry that thrived on exclusivity, competition, and power dynamics that often left little room for genuine connection. Celebrities, despite their fame, were constantly battling for attention, for relevance, and for their place in the ever-shifting hierarchy of Hollywood. Meghan Markle had entered this world as someone who was already a media figure, someone who carried with her the weight of royal heritage and a complex, deeply scrutinized public life. But the reality of Hollywood was different from the world of the British royal family. In Hollywood, you could not rely on titles or status. You had to rely on your talent, your image, and your ability to stay relevant. For someone like Meghan, whose public image had been carefully curated for years, it was a hard lesson to learn. The rejection from Rachel Brosnahan was a stark reminder that, despite her celebrity status, Meghan was not immune to the rules of the game in Hollywood. In the world of the stars, you had to earn your place. Your public persona, your worth, your image, all of these things had to align with the industry's ever-changing standards. Meghan, who had been at the top of the royal hierarchy, now found herself on a different playing field. One where power was distributed differently, and where established stars like Rachel had their own space to define their boundaries. The reality of this new world hit Meghan hard. She had spent years in the royal family, an institution that afforded her a certain level of respect and privilege. But in Hollywood, she was just another celebrity trying to maintain her place in an industry that was relentless and unforgiving. The premiere was supposed to be an opportunity for Meghan to solidify her place in this world, a place she had fought so hard to enter. Yet, Rachel's refusal to take the photo was a sign that Meghan was not automatically entitled to the kind of access she had once enjoyed as a royal. This moment, this rejection on the red carpet, was not just a simple celebrity snub. It was symbolic of the larger conflict Meghan faced in her new life in Hollywood. She had hoped to carve out a space for herself as a humanitarian and activist, using her platform to bring attention to important causes. Yet, time and time again, her attempts to control her public narrative and redefine herself seemed to backfire. The media and the public would not let go of the image of Meghan as a former royal, and every misstep, every moment of perceived weakness, was exploited by the press. Meghan's frustration with Hollywood and its lack of reverence for her past is not something new. Over the years, she has repeatedly expressed her disillusionment with the entertainment industry, particularly with how it treats women, especially women who dare to stand out or challenge the status quo. Her comments about the toxic nature of the media, the invasion of privacy, and the way she had been treated during her time as a working royal have painted a picture of someone who feels constantly misunderstood and vilified. Yet, at the same time, Meghan has also shown a deep desire to remain relevant in this new world. She has spoken about the importance of using her voice for good, of addressing global issues such as racial equality and mental health. But the constant pressure to maintain a public persona, to juggle her roles as a celebrity, activist, and wife, has left her navigating a complex web of expectations. Hollywood, with its glamour and its ruthlessness, has not made the transition easy for her. The rejection by Rachel Brosnahan was a stark reminder of this struggle. While Meghan may have expected the red carpet to be a place where she could assert herself, it instead became a battleground. A place where she was reminded of her position as a newcomer to an industry that cared little for her royal past and demanded that she prove her worth like everyone else. Hollywood, it seemed, wasn't about titles or names. It was about what you could offer in the here and now. Meghan's emotional reaction to the rejection, then, wasn't just about her pride. It was about her sense of identity. For someone who had spent years crafting a public image, who had lived a life that was constantly under the microscope, the refusal on the red carpet was a harsh blow. It was a reminder that she could no longer rely on the weight of her past to command respect. In Hollywood, she had to prove herself all over again. In the days following the premiere, the media and the public would continue to dissect the interaction, questioning Meghan's reaction and what it said about her ability to navigate her new life. The rejection had been a turning point, a moment that highlighted the ongoing tension between Meghan Markle and the world of Hollywood. It was clear that, despite her fame, she was still fighting for her place in an industry that didn't automatically grant her the same level of reverence she had enjoyed as a royal. But the fallout from this incident would also spark larger conversations about the nature of fame, power, and the way women are treated in the media. Was Meghan's emotional outburst a sign of weakness, or was it simply a reflection of the immense pressure she faced in an unforgiving public sphere? Could she ever truly escape the shadow of her royal past, or was she destined to always fight to redefine herself in a world that had already defined her? For now, the incident would continue to haunt Meghan as she navigated the complex world of Hollywood, a world where every rejection, every failure, and every triumph was magnified and scrutinized. The conflict between Meghan Markle and Hollywood was far from over. In fact, it seemed to have only just begun. Behind the scenes, what was said off camera? As the public fallout from the red carpet incident began to unfold, the true gravity of the confrontation between Meghan Markle and Rachel Brosnahan started to reveal itself. While the press, social media, and onlookers had their say, the more private conversations, those that took place away from the cameras, held a different kind of truth. What exactly was said off camera in the aftermath of the moment? What went through the minds of those who witnessed the exchange firsthand? And what did the key players, Meghan, Rachel, and their teams, think as the situation began to spiral? For those who were close enough to the incident, it became clear that the tension was far from resolved once the cameras stopped flashing. Meghan Markle, still visibly upset by the refusal, was said to have retreated quickly from the public eye, but not without leaving behind a trail of emotions that spoke volumes. Eyewitnesses later reported that Meghan's team, working quickly behind the scenes, had gone into full damage control mode. Their goal was clear: prevent the incident from going viral and ensure that no footage of the confrontation reached the media. But what about Rachel? What had been going through her mind when she turned Meghan away? For Rachel Brosnahan, the moment had been relatively straightforward. She had simply chosen not to participate in a photo op she wasn't comfortable with. Yet, it wasn't long before her own team, too, began to assess the situation. Unlike Meghan, who had an entire public relations team at her disposal, Rachel's approach had been far more personal. She was known to be a private person, someone who valued her independence and did not feel the need to cater to public expectations. In the aftermath, Rachel remained tight-lipped. Her silence only added fuel to the fire, as speculation about her reasons for the refusal spread like wildfire. For Rachel's team, the priority was to avoid getting involved in the growing controversy. It was clear that the incident would generate headlines, but Rachel did not want to be painted as the villain in a media narrative that seemed to favor Meghan's side. In their private discussions, Rachel's representatives were said to have agreed that, while the moment might have seemed harsh to some, Rachel's decision was one of self-respect and personal boundaries. As one of her close colleagues mentioned later, Rachel was in no way trying to insult Meghan. She simply wasn't comfortable with the situation, and there's nothing wrong with asserting your own space. Meghan, on the other hand, took a different approach in the aftermath. In private, she reportedly expressed a sense of betrayal, though not by Rachel, but by the media and by Hollywood itself. Meghan had spent years crafting an image that was grounded in compassion, dignity, and strength. She had been trained in the art of public appearances, and for someone like her, being publicly rejected felt like an affront to everything she had worked for. But what stung the most wasn't the refusal. It was the realization that, in Hollywood, she was just another celebrity trying to make it in an industry where titles and pedigrees didn't matter. The public rejection of her request for a photo was symbolic of a larger struggle Meghan had been facing for years: how to maintain control over her narrative when it seemed as though everything, including her identity, was constantly under fire. During private conversations with her team, Meghan reportedly questioned the way she had been treated in Hollywood. "Is this what it's going to be like?" she allegedly said. "Constantly fighting for attention and respect when no one seems to care about my story?" Her frustration was palpable. Despite her fame, despite her royal background, despite her charitable work, Meghan felt invisible in this new world. Hollywood, it seemed, was not impressed by her title or her past. They only cared about who you were in the moment. Her emotional reaction to the rejection was not just about one photo. It was about the cumulative weight of her experiences in the public eye. For years, Meghan had been scrutinized for everything from her wardrobe choices to her relationship with the royal family, and now, she found herself struggling to carve out her own place in an industry that had no room for royal pedigree or the kind of privilege she once enjoyed. The rejection was, in many ways, a wake-up call, one that reminded her that in Hollywood, you had to prove yourself on your own terms, regardless of your past. In the days following the incident, Meghan's team worked tirelessly behind the scenes, making calls and meeting with public relations professionals to manage the fallout. They quickly realized that they needed to pivot their approach and reframe the narrative. Meghan's public relations team crafted a statement, which was later issued, that downplayed the incident and referred to it as a misunderstanding. However, the damage had already been done. The story had spread too quickly, and the media had already latched onto it, taking the incident and running with it in every direction. Despite the official statement, many believe that Meghan was privately struggling to come to terms with the reality of her place in Hollywood. She had been accustomed to a certain level of reverence and respect, a level that came with her title as a royal. But in Hollywood, she was just another celebrity, albeit a very famous one, trying to fit in with a group of people who had their own rules, expectations, and power dynamics. Rachel, meanwhile, was largely unfazed by the media attention surrounding the incident. Those close to her reported that she remained focused on her work, keeping a low profile as the story continued to evolve. Unlike Meghan, who often found herself in the crosshairs of public criticism, Rachel's approach was more reserved. She didn't need to publicly defend herself, nor did she feel the need to apologize for a decision that was rooted in personal boundaries. Her silence was a powerful statement in itself, a reminder that in Hollywood, sometimes the best course of action was to let the storm pass and carry on with business as usual. Behind closed doors, both Meghan and Rachel had to come to terms with what had happened and what it meant for their respective futures. For Meghan, it was a moment of reckoning. A stark reminder that even in a world as public as Hollywood, there was no guarantee of respect, no guarantee of a warm reception. For Rachel, it was a chance to assert her autonomy and her right to refuse any situation that didn't align with her own personal values. In the grand scheme of things, the rejection might have seemed trivial, but the emotional and psychological impact it had on both women would resonate for weeks to come. As the days passed, the story slowly began to fade from the front pages, replaced by the next celebrity scandal or event. But for Meghan and Rachel, the behind-the-scenes discussions would linger. For Meghan, the incident would remain a symbol of the ongoing tension between her desire to control her image and the reality of the entertainment world. For Rachel, it was a quiet reminder of her own strength and independence in a business that often demanded compliance. Ultimately, the real impact of the encounter between Meghan Markle and Rachel Brosnahan would not be measured by the public reactions or the media coverage. It would be felt in the way the two women moved forward in their careers, how they navigated the complex dynamics of fame, and how they chose to manage their identities in a world that had a tendency to dehumanize and commodify its stars. The world of fame, especially in Hollywood, is intricately tied to the ever-watchful gaze of the paparazzi. The paparazzi are the unseen, often unwanted players who stalk the famous, capturing their every move, no matter how small or personal. Their cameras are more than just instruments of documentation. They are tools of influence, shaping public perception and feeding the media machine that thrives on celebrity culture. For Meghan Markle and Rachel Brosnahan, the paparazzi played a crucial role in how their encounter at the Superman premiere was perceived by the public. From the moment Meghan Markle and Rachel Brosnahan crossed paths on the red carpet, the paparazzi were there, their cameras snapping away, capturing every moment. These photographers are trained to detect the slightest change in a celebrity's behavior, to notice a flicker of discomfort, a shift in posture, a fleeting expression of emotion. It's their job to find the story, and often, they do so by catching celebrities off guard, documenting moments that may not be intended for public consumption. In this instance, the paparazzi's lenses were focused on Meghan and Rachel long before the rejection even took place, and as soon as the interaction happened, the cameras were ready to capture it. The paparazzi's role in this situation was more than just capturing the image of two famous women at a high-profile event. It was about framing the narrative. Every photograph taken had the potential to shape how the world viewed the encounter, how it was interpreted, and what conclusions the public might draw. The cameras, in essence, were the silent narrators of this story. Their role went far beyond simply snapping photos. They were integral in building the narrative that would unfold in the coming hours, days, and weeks. As the moment of the rejection unfolded between Meghan and Rachel, the flashes from the photographers intensified. They didn't miss a beat, capturing Meghan's facial expressions as she processed the refusal, her lips tightening as frustration replaced the smile that had been there just moments earlier. The interaction was brief, but it was enough to capture the attention of everyone around them. The camera's lens zoomed in on the tension between the two women, making it impossible to ignore the discomfort that had taken root on the red carpet. The paparazzi did what they always do. They sold the images to media outlets. Within hours, the story had spread beyond Hollywood. Newspapers, online publications, and tabloid magazines were all eager to paint their own version of the events. Some outlets emphasized Meghan's reaction, portraying her as a woman who had been humiliated by Rachel's refusal. Others focused on Rachel, positioning her as the assertive celebrity who wasn't afraid to stand up to a royal figure. In both cases, the narrative was shaped by the photos that had been taken, photos that highlighted the emotions, the drama, and the tension. For Meghan Markle, the paparazzi had become an ever-present force in her life. From her time as a member of the royal family to her new life in the United States, the media had always been there, following her every move. The tabloids had painted her as everything from a princess to a villain, and in many ways, Meghan had struggled to reclaim control over her own narrative. She had spoken out against the invasive nature of the press and had repeatedly called for better treatment of celebrities in the public eye. Yet, despite her efforts to control the media narrative, she found herself once again being shaped by the very forces she sought to escape. The photos of Meghan's outburst at the premiere were plastered across the front pages, providing endless fodder for gossip. The media didn't just report on the facts, they sensationalized the story, using the images to fuel a narrative that depicted Meghan as a woman who had been publicly embarrassed. The carefully curated image of grace and poise that Meghan had spent years constructing began to unravel under the pressure of the paparazzi's lenses. For Rachel Brosnahan, the situation was somewhat different. She had, by all accounts, managed to avoid the worst of the paparazzi frenzy that often accompanied celebrities of Meghan's caliber. While Rachel was no stranger to the media spotlight, thanks to her successful career and her high-profile role in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, she had largely managed to stay out of the tabloid chaos that Meghan had become so intimately familiar with. Rachel's reaction to the encounter, therefore, was more about asserting her boundaries in a world that often asked celebrities to act as public property. She had made a choice to stand firm, and while the paparazzi captured it, the aftermath was relatively quiet in comparison to the storm that had engulfed Meghan. But even Rachel couldn't escape the intense scrutiny of the media for long. The paparazzi's lens didn't just focus on Meghan's emotional reaction, it also sought out Rachel's calm composure, her nonchalant attitude in the face of the drama. For many, Rachel's ability to remain unruffled by the situation was admirable, and the photos of her walking away from the exchange became a symbol of her control and confidence. Yet, even as Rachel maintained her composure, the media's narrative was still shaped by the images of the rejection. The press focused on the power dynamic, speculating on why Rachel had refused the photo and turning it into a story of celebrity rivalry, intentional or not. The role of the paparazzi in shaping this narrative cannot be overstated. In the world of Hollywood, the public image of a celebrity is as much about what is photographed as it is about what is said. The photos from that red carpet moment, taken in mere seconds, would be analyzed and dissected for weeks to come. They would be used by journalists to push a particular narrative, to frame the story in a way that fit the media's agenda, and to sell copies of magazines and newspapers. The paparazzi were more than just observers of this incident. They were active participants in crafting the drama. The constant presence of the paparazzi also raised important questions about the ethics of celebrity culture. Was it fair for Meghan Markle and Rachel Brosnahan to be treated as objects to be photographed and dissected for public consumption? The media's portrayal of this incident as a dramatic celebrity clash was nothing new. It was a pattern that had been followed for years, where the personal lives of celebrities were often treated as public entertainment. Yet, in this case, the emotional complexity of the situation went largely unnoticed in favor of a more sensational story. The nuances of Meghan's struggle to maintain control over her image were overshadowed by the need to create a spectacle for the public's consumption. As the days went by, the media continued to feed the story, with the paparazzi continuing to capture every moment of the aftermath. Every reaction, every gesture, every interaction was photographed and turned into a piece of the larger narrative that had been crafted in the wake of the rejection. Meghan's discomfort, Rachel's composure. Both were now part of the broader Hollywood drama that the paparazzi had captured and amplified. What had started as a small, private moment on the red carpet had evolved into yet another chapter in the ongoing saga of celebrity and public image. The role of the paparazzi, in this case, was more than just capturing an image. It was about creating a narrative, shaping the public's perception, and ensuring that the story continued to unfold in front of the cameras. In Hollywood, there was no such thing as an unimportant moment. Every gesture was significant, every photo carried weight, and the paparazzi were the gatekeepers of this world. In the aftermath of the infamous confrontation on the red carpet at the Superman premiere, the ramifications for Meghan Markle's public persona were swift and far-reaching. For someone who had already spent years under the microscope, constantly battling against the tidal waves of media scrutiny, this incident marked yet another challenge in her ongoing struggle to maintain control over her image. The outburst, the visible frustration, and the behind-the-scenes demands to erase the footage only added layers to the complex narrative surrounding her, one that was already fraught with contradiction and public disapproval. For Meghan, the reality was that her public image had always been a double-edged sword. On one hand, she was loved by many for her advocacy work, her commitment to social justice, and her role as a modern-day royal figure. On the other hand, she had become a lightning rod for controversy, with her every move being examined and critiqued by both the public and the media. The Superman premiere incident would serve as a reminder of how fragile her carefully constructed persona had become, how easily a single moment could unravel years of public image management. The fallout from the red carpet rejection quickly morphed into a media spectacle. Headlines blared, capturing the essence of Meghan's emotional reaction. Meghan Markle humiliated after Hollywood snub, and Duchess of Sussex throws tantrum at Superman premiere. The tone was harsh and unforgiving, leaning into the idea that Meghan, who had once been revered as a symbol of grace and dignity, had somehow lost control and exposed a side of herself that was less polished, more human, and, perhaps, less likable. For someone like Meghan, who had spent much of her life in the public eye trying to balance the competing demands of being a royal, a celebrity, and an advocate, this moment was particularly painful. She had prided herself on being more than just a tabloid fixture. She had tried to carve out a new identity after stepping away from royal duties, to become a voice for the voiceless, a symbol of change. Yet, the media seemed intent on continuing to reduce her to a figure of ridicule, someone caught in a constant battle between personal desire and public expectations. This public blowback was not only a personal blow to Meghan, it was a reflection of the larger issues she faced in her relationship with the public. The backlash revealed the deep-rooted biases that still existed against her, especially as a woman who had dared to defy royal traditions and the expectations placed upon her. For many, Meghan's reaction was not seen as an isolated incident, but as part of a larger narrative about her inability to fit in with the Hollywood elite, to navigate the complex web of fame, and to accept rejection without resorting to anger or frustration. But the real damage went beyond the headlines. The incident had profound implications for how Meghan was perceived by those closest to her and those she hoped to connect with in her new life. In the world of Hollywood, power dynamics were constantly in flux, and Meghan, despite her title and fame, was no longer at the top of the hierarchy. The rejection by Rachel Brosnahan had exposed this truth in a way that Meghan had not anticipated. The industry she had once sought to be a part of, and even influence, now seemed to be pushing back against her presence. Her royal status, her activism, her charitable work, none of these things could shield her from the realities of Hollywood's competitive and often unforgiving nature. In the days following the premiere, Meghan's team scrambled to control the narrative. The statement released by her representatives, attempting to downplay the situation and frame it as a misunderstanding, was meant to quell the growing storm. But the damage had already been done. Meghan's emotions had been laid bare for the world to see, and the press, ever eager to feed the public's appetite for scandal, wasted no time in amplifying the story. The more Meghan and her team tried to distance themselves from the incident, the more the media pushed the narrative that she had been publicly humiliated and could not accept being rejected in such a public manner. But it wasn't just the media that had a role in shaping the public's perception of Meghan. Social media, that ever-present force in modern celebrity culture, quickly exploded with reactions to the incident. The hashtags #Meghan Markle and #Rachel Brosnahan dominated Twitter feeds and Instagram posts, with fans, critics, and onlookers weighing in on the event. Some supported Meghan, expressing sympathy for the difficult pressures she faced in the public eye, while others criticized her for being unable to handle the rejection with grace. The internet, as it often does, was divided, fueled by opinions from people who would never fully understand the complexities of celebrity life. In the wake of this social media frenzy, Meghan's public persona began to shift. She was no longer just the Duchess of Sussex or the woman who had stepped away from royal life to start a new chapter. She was now being cast as the celebrity who couldn't handle the pressures of fame, the woman who had shown her true colors when faced with a rejection on a public stage. And while many continued to defend her, the damage to her reputation among some was undeniable. Her critics saw the outburst as further evidence that she was ill-prepared for the cutthroat world of Hollywood, while her supporters were left to wonder if she would ever be able to reconcile her public life with the image she had always sought to uphold. For Meghan, the aftermath of the Superman premiere was a reminder of the inherent volatility of celebrity. It underscored the fact that no matter how much control one might try to exert over their image, there were always outside forces, media, public opinion, and the whims of the entertainment industry that could derail even the most carefully managed public persona. Meghan had spent years building a brand based on activism, compassion, and royal elegance, but now she was faced with a new challenge, reconciling the expectations of the public with the raw, unfiltered reality of her emotions and her struggles. What Meghan may have learned from this incident is that the public does not care for perfection. The public cares for authenticity, for vulnerability, and for the ability to navigate moments of failure without crumbling under the weight of their own pride. Her reaction to the rejection, while human, revealed a side of her that was more volatile than anyone had expected. It was a moment of weakness, one that left her exposed in ways that few in her position had ever been. As the days turned into weeks, Meghan's public persona would continue to evolve. The media would continue to scrutinize her every move, continuing to question whether she could maintain her composure in Hollywood, whether she could endure the pressures of fame without losing her sense of self. But in the end, it was clear that the Superman premiere incident would mark a turning point in how Meghan was viewed, not just by the public, but by herself as well. The road ahead for Meghan Markle was never going to be easy, but how she handled moments like this would define her legacy in the public eye.